There he is.
Hey, hey.
We made it.
We did it. We're on the other side.
All right.
Are we live now? Let me know.
Yep, we're good.
We're doing it? This is the thing?
Transported.
Welcome, everybody. We made it to the final panel of the ASA Unity Conference, Day 1. Thank you for joining us. I'm David Downs, Senior Editor over at Leafly. We got a wonderful final panel for you about the future of quality control, making sure your cannabis is clean in every state. We have two great panelists here. I will let them introduce themselves. And yeah, go ahead. Élan, say hi.
Hey everyone, I'm Élan Sudberg, CEO of Alchemist Labs. We are a 24-and-a-half-year-old plant testing lab. We spend most of our time in the dietary supplement industry and have avoided the recreational cannabis testing for a long time due to our DEA registration. We do test hemp, and I've got lots of testing experience and plenty to say. I'm just grateful for your attention today. Thank you.
And Sheri, welcome, Sheri.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here in such esteemed company. I'm Sheri Tarr. I'm the founder and chief advisor of my own consultancy called 68 Partners. I work with cannabis and life sciences brands and licensed applicants. I try to help them commercialize safe products. I come to cannabis after over 30 years on the pharma side, first working for them as a marketing executive, and then I spent a bunch of years in the courtroom holding pharma accountable for deceptive marketing and defective manufacturing. So that's my lens.
Great. I want to, first of all, thank Americans for Safe Access for throwing this. Thanks to all the patients and other audience members here. Thank you to the sponsors who put it on, including Dr. Bronner's. If you have any tech issues, I recommend you just take a bong load. They usually resolve themselves by the time the bong load's over, and don't stress out about it. We are inviting questions for the back bit of this panel, so go ahead and drop those in the chat, and we will see them and rank them and try to answer the best ones. You know, before I started with demanding federal intervention, testing, contamination, and health, I just wanted to set up a little context for our readers here, and it struck me that, you know, we're enjoying the cleanest cannabis in human history because of legalization and state laws so far, and because of that, you know, the support for legalizations in the high 60s, for medicals in the 90s. To me, there are more humans investigating cannabinoid therapeutics than at any time in human history. And though we have our challenges, whether they be unequal justice or unequal access or unequal opportunity or quality control, we are standing at a new apex for cannabinoids in human history. Eighths are $6 in Oregon. Oklahoma medical marijuana is booming. New York, Virginia, New Mexico just legalized it. Arrests are collapsing in legalization states. The industry has 321,000 full-time jobs, up 32% year over year. So we got a lot of work to do, but we've come a long way. And one of the salient things that emerged for the future happened in 2019 for me as a cannabis journalist, when people started getting sick from vape pens. And over at Leafly, we were cited by the Centers for Disease Control and the New England Journal of Medicine for ascertaining that there was a contamination issue in the supply chain of illicit vaporizer cartridges in the US primarily, but some of those contamination issues popped up in less regulated legal states as well. It was the first time that a cannabis product could give you an acute illness or injury or potentially kill you, which was a terrible moment for cannabis, which we know has no overdose. And it really showed how quality control issues were boiling over. I think the coronavirus really blew that issue off the news for a while, but as the coronavirus recedes, I think QC is going to emerge as the most salient issue. I wanted to start with Élan and your background in dietary wellness and supplements. You test a lot of elderberries right now. Yep. You're thinking about testing Delta 8. When you think about best practices and worst practices from the dietary supplement world and coming into cannabis, what do you think about, given your experience?
You know, testing. You know, Sheri and I had a quick call yesterday, and we both just agreed that testing is the foundation to all these industries, whether it's chamomile or cannabis. Garbage in, garbage out, and you'll hear her say that 6 more times, I'm sure. It's our favorite statement. You know, if you're testing poorly, you're gonna have poor quality material. If you're testing with good labs, with good practices, you'll have better quality material. So, I mean, he's got to start from that foundation. And, I'm here to try to speak on the idea of unifying testing standards in this industry, which is not something that we actually see in the dietary supplement industry. That's still not happening even in that more mature industry.
Yeah, one thing I learned reporting is that if you go into a health and wellness store and you're looking for some like melatonin or whatever, maybe you are looking for a label that shows like a third party check this to make sure it's good. And that process sort of came into cannabis a little bit, and it continues to rise and might be an avenue to broaden even further. Sheri, you have seen the world of pharma inside and out. One question I jumped right to at the end was like, do you think we're just going to see quality control by tort over the next 10, 20 years? Because like, it seems like there's a lot of ways to sue people for a dangerous product. And have you thought about QC by tort?
Well, you know what? I really do. I hope that we don't go there, but I do believe that this industry could go the way of pharmaceutical mass tort. Here's the thing. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for the industry and its stakeholders, the manufacturers, the marketers, to avoid that course. Look, we were talking, in the green room before we got on. Look, here's some good news. We're making progress. 30 plus states have legislation that's mandating testing, right, for potency and safety. And through the work that I've done in various states, when I've worked with licensing applicants in various states, and I've worked with brands to commercialize their products, everything from tinctures to chocolates, you name it. You look at there's a lot of room for some optimism, given what the states, notwithstanding the fact that it's a patchwork of testing standards. That said, the states are acting responsibly. So just because we don't have a unified system yet, we don't have standardization yet, doesn't mean that marketers and manufacturers can't be proactively responsible, and that consumers still should have access to safe products, and we can all participate in that. Hopefully, avoid torts, which is why I got out of that. I want to get on the front end and help brands and license applicants commercialize safe product. That's how we build a robust market. That's how we build trust. That's how we build sustainable brands, is through compliance and safety.
This panel was called Demanding Federal Intervention. And I know there's a lot of ASA patients and activists who are really leery of federal intervention. And the reality is that there's a spectrum. It's not binary of like no intervention, all intervention. There's 2.1 million federal workers and all these agencies. And from my position reporting, I see that each of them have a different hand on intervention of some kind. So like the DEA says the molecule is Schedule 1. If it's in the plant, the quality control is don't use it. Obviously, that's not working. Congress floated a THC cap this year, which isn't going anywhere. Freaking Senator Dianne Feinstein, California, leading the charge on a THC cap from the state that like took THC to the next level. The USPS right now is banning vaporizer parts in the mail, which is a chunk of the QC story and the concern about vaping injury. Tell me if I'm wrong, Élan, but isn't the USDA promulgating hemp regulations and hemp QC right now, and the states are kind of waiting for
and it's changing drastically.
Right. So I saw the CDC didn't have testing capacity when vaping hit. The state labs in these states have the standards and the SOPs, unvetted as they are, that they're still further along than the CDC's best lab. But shout out to New York. You guys did discover the vitamin E in your lab because you had that medical marijuana program that affirmatively sort of already banned it. And then I think of the FDA, which has QC over what? Dronabinol, Marinol, Sativex, Epidiolex, but they are trapped in this single molecule, single target paradigm for which whole plant cannabis and like an entourage effect or a symphony effect, like they don't even want to hear those words. Like there's no other substance that allows that. So I guess like the question to you is like, what is your biggest fear, each of you, with regard to federal quality control efforts, and your biggest hope?
Sure, you want to go first?
No, I want to hear your opinion.
Okay.
You asked me a question, I gave you an answer. No, it's fine. Go ahead. Go ahead, Élan.
On a personal stance, I don't like anyone telling me what to put in my body, injection or pill or whatever. But I do appreciate federal guidelines. As I mentioned, I hail from the dietary supplement industry. We have our GMPs. They've done a number of really great things for this industry, for that industry. They failed to be very specific, which allows for all sorts of not fit for purpose testing methods to be deployed, giving rise to data that's all over the place for the same sample. So in my industry, it's chamomile. Caffeine might be the biggest, most exciting compound. Now we're dealing with THC, which, you could lose your job. I had my own personal extreme experience back in '99 with something that was way stronger than it was supposed to be. I had 911 on the phone ready to press that 1 and send. It was that serious. And that was because something that was way stronger than it should have been, tested the wrong way. So I think there's a place for federal regulations. I think if they work with us, for us, it could be a really great experience. If they just dish out regs as they did before, and this 0.3 mumbo jumbo is it's baloney. It's not really fit for purpose.
Yeah, so here's the challenge, right? So because of the way that states have come on board, which creates this patchwork. So now, if the federal government comes in and imposes a certain set of regulations, it'll be a challenge, to say the least, to get everybody at that same level. And then who's to say what the right level is? There's a problem on the one hand, while the analog to some extent is with marketing and manufacturing of pharmaceutical drugs. Imagine if there were a patchwork of safety standards for pharmaceuticals. On the other hand, pharmaceuticals didn't come into the market in the way that cannabis has. So who's to set the standard? And if the standard is, if you will, too high, does that create a barrier to entry for lesser known players, for smaller establishments? Does that create opportunities for people to try to cut corners and to do lab testing in a cheaper way so that they can survive? So there's, on the one hand, it would be, I think, helpful for building a robust industry and a sustainable one, and allow patients and consumers to access safe products and rely on labels and rely on the data that's represented in the COAs and whatnot. I think that's important. On the other hand, the actual implementation of that could be limiting to some entrants. And I think Élan hit on it, that there needs to be a reasonableness to this. There needs to be a reasonable approach that takes into account these potentially conflicting points of view. I always come to the table with, let's be reasonable about these requirements. Let's incorporate what the states that have been successful have done. As opposed to, as Élan said, I don't like anybody coming in and telling me what to do. And so to do that in an aggregate sense and come in and just put the thumb down by the federal government, I think that would be, you'd probably get more pushback than you get acceptance. And we'd be right back where we are, which is a patchwork.
Where I was sitting, my last story about, vape injuries, looked at how each state was doing its analytes and what was banned or allowed in terms of what you were putting in a vape pen. And as you can imagine, there were these huge gaps and huge loopholes in each state where they just hadn't thought of this second and third gen, additives, cutters, diluent thickeners, whatever word you want to use for goop that's not weed, that's in your weed products. And to me, it seemed like the perfect place for the feds to come in with, industry leading the way, saying, because the industry was asking for, like, we would like a baseline. We would like a national baseline that covers some of this stuff. And the analysts the lab guys were saying, we need even a pipeline to study these vapor product ingredients to even like support setting a baseline. So it seems like the problems out there are pretty big, actually. And I wanted to double back to ask each of you, what do you see as the biggest quality control threats to public health in the cannabis space in 2021? We're writing a lot about Delta 8 that's a novel cannabis molecule that got loopholed in because of the hemp bill that everyone's using as the new, legal cannabinoid. And we're writing about how to shop for clean Delta 8 and the challenges it's going to be really, really hard. What do you two see as chief QC threats if we were just have to rank them and actually start tackling them?
Sure, you want to go first?
Yeah, I think it is what I alluded to before. I think the threat is how difficult it will be to standardize, even though at least a baseline, I think, is important. So that I think is the biggest challenge. I don't know if it's a threat, but it's certainly I think a challenge. But to me, I see a challenge as an opportunity here, and actually what we're working toward, the fact that we're actually presented with this challenge, it's actually kind of a good thing, right? Because that means that more states are coming on board, and people are getting woke to the fact that, hey, look, I want good product that's going to my body. I want to be able, says the consumer and the patient, I want to be able to rely on what's on these labels. So I think that I'm not sure about a threat, but I think it's just a challenge. How do we get to a level of standardization without thwarting and slowing the market, and strike that balance between standardization and in continuing to thrive, and making sure that consumers and patients have continuous access to safe products. So those are my thoughts. Time flies so fast when you're having fun. So let me be quiet and pivot to Élan.
Thank you. So I've got actually two answers, and I'll try to be as fast as I can. Labs are the gatekeeper to quality. So, it doesn't matter if you start off with good material, bad material. If you get through a good lab, that bad material won't get through. If you get through a bad lab, the bad material will get through. So crappy labs, in my opinion, is a huge threat. The second threat, real quick, is in the dietary supplement industry, you can sell chamomile for tea. If you took chamomile and you extracted it with some novel method and took out some goop and put that into an e-cartridge and you vaped it, it would be considered a new product, which was not allowed to be for sale by the FDA because we don't know about it. And I think there's a threat with innovation at the speed of which it's going in cannabis specifically, because there's not as much oversight. I mean, we get a lot of hate for these types of products. We don't know what these e-vape products are doing in our bodies because we don't have a ton of experience understanding that. So I think my answer is that the speed of innovation going unchecked for safety is another threat, because all we need is some more kids to die of another version of our new product, and we're just going to get hit with a black eye. So crappy labs and unchecked innovation are my answers.
David,
go ahead, Sheri.
Can I just add to that? Because I 100% agree. I'm going to come from you just went from the quality control and the manufacturing side. I'm going to go to the marketing side. In the same respect, I think that the greatest threat will be not the FDA imposing, not the federal government imposing. I think it's irresponsible marketers and manufacturers. I think it's the ones that I think it's, I don't want to say bad apples, but I think it's just the irresponsible marketers who are not being reasonable, or the manufacturers who are not being reasonable. I'm not saying be absolutely so rigid that you never get, the memo of no's from the lawyer that you'll never get a product on the market. I'm saying be reasonable, be professional, because I believe that if we all act responsibly and professionally and make products that are safe and that people can rely on, that's how we're going to change minds. That's how we're going to move products into the mainstream of commerce, in my humble opinion.
We're going to take some questions right now. I would just add that, I hear about THC and CBD products. It's not a threat to your health, but it'll be a threat to your job and your livelihood if you pop dirty. Those tests are still really common. And then, vapor products. It's a whole crazy new world. And then CBD in general, clean CBD, it's a caveat emptor space. And I get it. Most of the time it's just not CBD. It's not anything, but sometimes it's gnarly stuff, thankfully it's pretty rare. In the comments or in the questions, we got some solid ones about batch testing, and how much, what's a batch and how many batches, and really speaks to how the rubber, to me, and I'll throw it to you, Élan, how the rubber meets the road with that, and who writes those regs and who dictates them. Hopefully a mix of industry and public health, but it can be all over the map depending on how you do it, or it can be really onerous and lock out equity sort of low margin players. Élan?
So, the goal is to sell good products that are safe and effective, right? And so here's my answer to the question about, is it appropriate to do, or what's the appropriate testing schedule every batch that's grown, ? So the challenge I give you is, if you said, hey, consumers, I'm only testing every third thing that you're actually going to take, are they going to be pleased with that or not pleased with that? I mean, we all know the answer. They want as much testing and safety in the products as possible. In the dietary supplement industry, skip lot testing is possible if you go through some statistical averaging and find out what's approved. That's an approved method for the FDA, but no one's going to put on their brand, hey, we do skip lot testing, because every other batch is completely unknown. Even if you have super good consistency, I saw that the answer in one of the chats is that no, actually, with the variability in plants like this, you should be testing every batch. So that's my answer: test.
One thing I've seen is if you have like some compliant inspected SOPs, you might need to test less at the batch level. Like maybe there's a carrot and stick thing where you have to batch test everything unless you're in a third party certified program that shows there's no pesticides on the property, and we randomly inspect it.
But now, hypothetical, I'm now selling material. I'm going to find out who's doing that, and I'm going to say they only test every third thing. I test everything, and that's going to be my platform for marketing.
Okay. Sheri, any thoughts on batch testing regularity and depth?
I'm a measure twice, cut once person. So, and on the batch testing, that's like playing Russian roulette. And I'm not going to support that. I think now we shouldn't be looking where we can cut corners. I think if we have to do a broader approach and then trim it back, I think that consumers at the end of the day would prefer that. Then I certainly don't want to be looking at a tincture going, I wonder if I'm getting the second of the three that didn't get tested. No, that's not going to fly.
I feel like it always has to be balanced against the potential for harm. So, with weed, you're worried about like some aspergillus being in there, or the potency number being slightly off, or the heavy metal being suddenly there. And we're just not seeing like an acute injury from a flower exposure like that in any number that you're like worried, versus like, in our edibles in California, it's really strict around the tolerance for variance. You get like 1% or 5. And if you're doing microdosing, it's really hard to hit 5.05 milligrams per gummy. And these guys, a lot of tinctures went off the shelf. A lot of legacy producers couldn't hit the variance at the beginning. And there was a question of like, well, if it's 112 versus 110 milligrams of like elderberry and THC, like who's dying, anyway.
Well, from a statistics standpoint, I completely agree with you. I think from the consumer's vision, they don't give a shit about statistics. They want to know that what they're taking is going to be accurate to the label.
I don't know, man. Americans take a lot of weird stuff and then don't take a lot of stuff they're supposed to,
and experimental things. So,
I mean, for medicine,
Yeah.
And from the perspective as a former pharmaceutical marketer and a pharmaceutical litigator, I say have enough faith in your product and the consumer, and just tell them the truth. Tell them the truth, what's in there and what they're getting, and let them decide if that's something that they're willing to tolerate. And I'm a big fan of it's the same perspective. If you can't cite it, don't say it. But if you have something to say about safety and efficacy, say it and be accurate, and let the consumer and the physicians decide.
Michael McGuire asked, will the feds touch home cultivation? And gosh, when I think about QC and home cultivation, I think about the Reggie some people try to bring over to my house that they grew last year. I'm like, I don't want that. I don't even know how you grew that, I don't think a lot of these home growers are hurting themselves per se, although local, like personal, individual, non-commercial pesticide application is a pretty big vector of pesticide harm, but it's because they get a bunch on their hand and then wipe their face or do kind of this sillier stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, But I don't know, do you guys have any thoughts?
I just can't see the feds bothering with such small things. There's not enough Fed cops on the ground to deal with the chamomile problems, let alone the cannabis problems. So I don't think they're going to be bothering us at home in our tiny little grows. That's my opinion on that.
I mean, I guess they touch home cultivation right now. They say, don't do it. The quality control is don't do it. And we will put you in, serious prison if you do a lot of it. Sheri?
I agree with that. Mr. McGuire, I believe, has a vested interest in this. He's in New York, where that shockingly is right. 3 cheers for New York and home grow. I tend to agree. I think that all of the agencies that are elbowing their way into this space are going to try to justify their existence in other ways than picking on home grow. That's my opinion.
Oh, I'm looking for some more questions. If you got them, feel free to drop them in the stage or drop them on the side. I had some more questions for the team. Is there any other federal quality control efforts to mimic internationally? Do you guys look at what Canada's doing or Germany? Be like, gosh, I wish we had that here, or no, we don't want any of that here.
We do. We have clients from all over the planet. So the Health Canada or Australians FDA, the TGA, are very particular about their testing needs, unsafe for hemp, but we follow those rules. And for hemp, Canada has, and the international rules are different from the US rules, for sure. As far as the THC, I think it's less than 0.3 requirement. For the hemp, my apologies.
Sheri, got an international outlook?
More with respect to our neighbors to the north, I think that their safety regulations are very strict, and what's that?
Sorry, my screen froze. You keep going.
Yeah, I tend to be more conservative when it comes to safety and testing, and I think that Canada kind of has it right, and it's very similar, quite frankly, to what we're dealing with in the at least in the FDA when it comes to drugs. So that's my firsthand experience, is working with Canadians.
Yep.
Okay, I found the question. Sheri, let's do rapid fire. In your opinion, which state has the best testing program?
Oh, I already told you that I can't say that. I'm gonna say
California.
No, I'm gonna say
we invented heavy metals.
You're in California, so you can have California. I'm gonna
Colorado
say
next year when they do emissions testing.
All right,
you can do now.
We're all subjective. I think, David, you can have California, and Élan's also in California. I think New York will have the best. I have, through my work with licensed applicants in some pretty conservative states, I think New York will do well to borrow from Illinois and New Jersey, and even Georgia to some extent, which is a very strict pharmaceutical model. So I think New York will have the best. But again, level of subjectivity.
Debbie Marion asked, Élan, what about the USP work and the publication last year about cannabis standards? I wanted to shout out the Herbal Pharmacopoeia imprint on QC. Yep. Boom.
Huge. It's wonderful. It's, there is a shortage of official methods. USP has one, or is working on that. And AOAC has one. Huge fan of Nandu, and go over check him out in the other expo. He's one of my greatest friends in this industry. So yeah, the USP is wonderful and very, very reliable source for methodology.
We're at the end. I'll give you guys a last question. There's a lot of industry people here. What do they need to prep for at the state and federal level? How does the industry lead? You got 30 seconds, Élan and Sheri, each.
Oh boy, I would just say, if you're going to sell products, you need to have a good lawyer. You can get so far in this game without knowing what you're doing, and it can all just come crumbling away. So I just think, make sure you know your regulations, make sure you know your consumers, and lawyer up from the beginning. That's my
lawyer up and lead. Sheri?
I'm not sure I actually agree with the lawyer up part, as long as they have experience navigating regulations and have a compliance perspective. I think that, what's that?
That's the lawyer.
Oh, I'm a recovering lawyer.
Okay,
I'm
sorry,
a
my bad.
regulatory whisperer and not
Right.
a recovering. I'm a recovering lawyer. I think that lawyers have a role, but more importantly, I do agree with line yourself up with the right experts, particularly the ones that understand how to navigate complex regulations. And if you're a license applicant or want to be brand, make sure that you have somebody on board that understands that safety and compliance is the segue to your business being sustainable and successful.
That's it. We're out of time. This was the last panel. Thank you so much. Turn over to some closing remarks, and there's some social spaces afterwards. Make sure to follow Asa and Élan and Sheri and all their great work. I just appreciate everybody who did it, who made it. And thanks for putting on pants and turning on your camera today. Go get your shot. Keep your mask on. Stay safe. Be well. The future will be better.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.